We are now going to move on to our plenary speaker, and I'm really, really pleased and excited to welcome Guin Batten, who's going to be with us today. And she's going to be talking about her career as a rower and the challenges that she came up to. So Guin, hello and welcome.
Hi, thanks ever so much for inviting me, team. I'm really looking forward to sharing some stuff with you. Brilliant. So I'm down in cloudy Reading. I think the sun's moved north, so I hope you guys have got a beautiful evening around you. So yeah, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about being on the water and a little bit about in fact, an ocean row between New York and the UK, and some of the things that I learned about being in a small team. Yeah, and really, hopefully you'll enjoy it. And then we've got a bit of time at the end for some questions. And yeah, please think of some questions as we go along, and let me take you on a ride. Okay, let me share the screen. I've got some great pictures and some videos. Great. So I talked about the impossible, making the impossible possible, and the power of the small team. And really, for me, there's a couple of things that I want to share with you before we get going. And it's really interesting. I have this real desire to do things when somebody tells me something isn't possible. I've got a real desire to go out and do it. And here's a little bit of a few of the things that I've sort of done so far in my life so far, and I'm hoping to go on and do other stuff. So I think, you know, back in, I ended up being a rower, and I remember the first time that I went out and tried to race to get into the Great Britain team. The rowing coach at the time said, "Guin, you'll never be an international rower. You're too small." And I'm absolutely convinced that that was, for me, the turning point for proving him wrong. And I think that was the beginning of my desire to do things that people say are impossible and trying to make them possible. And actually, exactly 1 year to that very weekend, I had to get into the single scull, so I had to go and race on my own. I was ranked 8th in the world. And I often went back and spoke to that chief coach as my career progressed, and thanked him ever so much for doubting me, because I'm not sure I would have got off my backside and really gone out and really gone for it had he not said those words. But probably, what is the real reason as to why I think I like doing things differently? And I think it's because I'm a second child. I'm the second child. I think I've got really bad second child syndrome. And I think that that's what it is, all about attention seeking disorder. And actually, what's been great fun is I'm still really close with my sister, and both my sister and I, we rowed together at the Olympic Games and were part of Great Britain's first ever Olympic medal winning crew for the women. And that was in Sydney. And what was quite interesting again there was nobody thought that we were going to come back with the medal. And so it's that opportunity. There's often so many doubters around you. And if you can find that small group of people, you can take on what many, many people think are impossible. So let's think about one of the things I wanted to share with you today is often we read in the newspapers, we look on television, and we see other people's success, and it always looks easy. And there's one thing that I've learned through my journey in my life so far, is that success is a brutal street fight of a journey. You've got to climb up every time. And often, you know, the mountains are only high because the valleys are deep. And that question is how do we climb out of these valleys? What is it that allows us to achieve things nobody else thought that we could go on to achieve? And I reflect back now and I think, why did we set out to row across the Atlantic? Why did we set out to row from New York to Falmouth? You know, if you look at the odds and you look at it on paper, you wouldn't have done it. So 4,000 people have been to the top of Everest. Only 700 people have rowed an ocean. only 61 people have rowed between the North Atlantic, which is the wrong way because you want to go the other way, which is the trade wind routes, where when you go the North Atlantic from New York to the UK, that's you have to use the weather systems rather than the trade wind routes. Only 61 people have been that way, and only no British women had ever been able to do it. And then the really crazy thing was, of all the people that leave the US or Canada to try and row across it, only 68% succeed. And sadly, of course, 6 people have died doing it as well. So why did we think it was possible? Why did we take it on? I don't know. Maybe it's because somebody told us we wouldn't be able to do it. So I then think, when you're there and you're at the edge of doing something, so the edge of possibility, it probably is the single most important thing is the resilience. So it's the resilience that is the currency of success in that space. And what I want to talk to you about today is a little bit about the resilience and how we built the resilience that we needed to cross the North Atlantic. So our aim was to go from New York all the way. We had quite a lot of days where we could always turn left and exit out of our journey. But primarily we were aiming to come all the way across to the UK. Big, scary goals, very frightening, in fact, when you think about it. And there we were. Here's a picture of us. Here's a picture of us in New York. And this is the boat. It's 8.5 meters long. There's 5 of us in that boat. And we actually had to make a decision before we left, is that the record was over 80 days. We could only fit 60 days of food into our boat. So we knew that we were either going to be very, very hungry or we were going to break the record. And we actually there wasn't enough space, and we actually had to eat our way into the cabins. The first couple of nights, there wasn't much room in those cabins. And as we managed to eat more and more food, we had more and more space. So this was us literally just before we were about to depart. And at just before 12 noon on the 7th of June, 2016, we went out onto the New York waters and started underneath the Statue of Liberty. And we were about here where this ferry is. And I could tell you all the ferries were aiming for us as we waited for the clock to count down to 12 noon. And as the day went on, we rode out of New York, and as the light disappeared, and it was probably the most scariest night of my entire life, the lights of Coney Island and Brighton Beach started to disappear into the distance. And through the night, we rode down Long Island, trying to stay north of the shipping channels. And you can see Long Island here. We tried to stay north of them because there's so many ships that come into New York. Because what was really important for us was that we weren't going to meet one of these. And this is a picture. In fact, we're not even to scale because I couldn't get our picture small enough. We're about half of that size. And these ships are enormous. We met this ship just off the Grand Banks, and we could just hear the engine minutes before we could see it as it came onto into the horizon. They're amazingly large ships, and they were probably the biggest risk of being mowed down. But at the same time, these things which were our biggest risks were also, if we got into trouble, these were the things that we would be using to rescue. And you would they'd throw a ladder over the side and you have to climb up. It's always very scary if you ever look at any of the pictures of people that have had to climb up the sides of these boats. And so after 3 days, we went past this island called Nantucket Island. And I thought, oh, wow, I think that rings a bell. And of course, it's the fictional home of Moby Dick. So I found a really great picture here of Moby Dick. Luckily, we did see a whale, but it didn't throw us out of our little rowing boat. And then after day 21, we hit the Grand Banks. And the Grand Banks is a shallow ridge that comes out from Nova Scotia. And the Labrador current brings this really cold current down, and it mixes with the warm Gulf Stream, and there's so much fish and wildlife in the water. There's a lot of fishing that goes on, and some of the toughest fishermen in the world fish the Grand Banks. And of course, some of you may remember that the Grand Banks is really famous for a true story called The Perfect Storm. And so we didn't actually see waves that big, but we saw pretty big waves. And so gradually, as time went on, we left the last promontory of land. There was no way we could turn back. The only thing we could do was go forward. There was no exit out after 21 days. And on day 31, we hit a storm, and that storm was massive. It was, you can see there's a wave coming towards us in the distance, and it's going to come crashing down onto the boat. And it was really scary on that day. And we were only about 100 miles from where the wreck of the Titanic was at that moment. So it was a very poignant moment to be in. And gradually, as we carried on, we came midway point where the tectonic plates between Europe and the Americas is some of the largest waves in the Atlantic are found. And then as we got closer and closer to Britain, we started seeing more shipping and more birds, and we got faster and faster. And of course, I'm sure it was because we wanted to get home. And then finally we came into Great Britain, and you could see Bishop's Rock. This is a rock right out in the middle of the ocean that has this lighthouse on it. And once you pass that, you've officially crossed the Atlantic. And this was the view that we could see right out in the distance. And we'd officially rowed an ocean, but we still had another 24 hours to row. And of course, as we came closer and closer, the first light we saw of Great Britain was the distant light of the Lizard. And in the morning, we arrived in Falmouth, having completed our journey across. So should we watch a little video? And so you can get a real feel of what it looks like on an 8.5 meter boat. Excellent. So here's a picture of us arriving in Falmouth. And I tell you what, 49 days, we lost 50 kilograms between us. We lost a small child somewhere on the boat. So even though we put those 60 days of food in, we still didn't have enough. And I tell you what, everything in the boat was moldy. Everything was wet. What I craved for was to go to sleep in a dry bed. But yeah, let me reflect back a little bit now on some of the stuff, because it was really interesting, the parallels between trying to cross an Atlantic, the ocean, and being a small crew, so insignificant in such a big place, being so controlled by the weather. It was an amazing place to be, and how did we cope with that? Well, there's three things I want to share, and the first one I want to share with you is that wherever you are, whenever team you're in, if you have a common goal, that helps you through the hard times, and that helps keep you on track. So whatever that is, whatever that shared vision or that common goal is, it's really important to hold you together to keep you on course. And if you look here, I pulled out our daily distance that we would do, and it is just a roller coaster. There were days when it would take us months to get back to England. Do you see what I mean? And the thought and the morale on the boat, and how did we hold it together on those really difficult days? And then, of course, there were days where there was really, we'd almost done 100 miles in a day, and it was so exciting. But then that day might be followed by another day that's right the way back down on the floor again. And so that ability to stay on track as everything, the roller coaster ride of success and failure goes on. Really important, sticking to those daily routines and that shared and common goal. And I guess that takes me to the second one, which is about routine. As we say that, this huge ambition that we had to row was only going to be based on the number of strokes, and each stroke we took, the boat hardly moved. So routines and anchors were really important. And I guess there were also times when it was really scary. We were a really small boat. We couldn't get out of the way. There was nobody going to be able to immediately take us out of the water. The only way that we were going to get rescued was to flag down one of those huge ships. And I remember, and you do get emails actually, I got an email from our router, so the guy that was giving us information about the weather. He sent me an email saying that we were going to get a storm force 11. That's one down from a hurricane. And here's a little picture of the storm as it went through, and we were about here. And I remember getting this email and thinking, the boat had never been in conditions like this. It was completely untested. Would we survive? And I remember sitting in my little room, in the cabin, the aft cabin, before I went up on deck and spoke to the guys and said, what am I going to say? And my team, I couldn't go on and be inspirational and say it was amazing and say it was brilliant, because they weren't that type of team. They were a team that just wanted it, just did everything. They were really, down. They just liked the basic things in life. They were not going to be convinced by inspiration. And so really, I remember, and this is the page in my journal. This is the only piece of paper that lasted, this little book, which is waterproof paper, that lasted the whole trip. I remember writing down what I was going to say. And you know what we did? We did our jobs. Came up on deck and said, look, we've got 6 till 2 o'clock. We've got to get everything ready for this storm when it's coming through. Alex, your jobs are this, this, and this. My jobs are this, this, and this. And what we did was we focused on our jobs, because what we couldn't focus on was the scariness of what was to come, because it was unknown. We didn't know it. So what we did was our anchors and our routine. And then similar sort of thing, we locked ourselves away in the 2 cabins at either end of the boat. And I remember writing a little timeline of what would happen with the wind as it came through, because it was going to come through, and it would be around about midnight where the wind would be at its absolute strongest. And that would be the most scariest time. And I can tell you, it was really scary. It sounded like there were, screeching. The wind was actually screeching on the boat. And so what we did was we locked ourselves away in the 2 end cabins. We put a radio between each other, and we told each other jokes over the radio, and we followed the track of the wind as it went down. And it was the anchors and this routines of what we do every day that kept us together and helped us to support each other as we went through. So anchors, routines and anchors are really, really important for getting through the hard stuff. And then I guess this is the bit that's really personal to me. And I've been in some really successful teams and I've been in some less successful teams. And the teams that are really successful, they connect in an emotional way. So there's the physical side of what I've done, but there's also the mental side, but there's also the emotional side. And that emotional side is probably one of the most important things of getting through the tough times. And that way is the ability to be able to give kindness to people. If you're able to receive kindness, you've got to be vulnerable in a little way to receive that. And so many people in the world, they will reject kindness because they don't want to show vulnerability. And absolutely, at the very extremes of possibility, that ability to show vulnerability and kindness makes a huge difference. So I have a little graph here to try and explain what I mean. So if you can imagine, the load is along this bottom scale. So whether it's a physical load, a mental load, or an emotional load, there is a point along that spectrum where we stop coping, where things we can't go on and things we don't seem to operate as well because the stress is too much or the load is too much. Yeah. And if you have someone in your life or someone in your team that can help you by showing kindness, you can go just that little bit more. And from my experiences, it's the small bits that matter. It's the small bits that make success. And sometimes it's a team that can show vulnerability and kindness that actually is the team that gets through the really tough times, that goes on and achieve impossible things ahead. So really important, that vulnerability and kindness in the relationship that you have with your teams. And if I summarize what I'm saying, because I'm coming to the end of time, at the edge of possibility, resilience is the currency of success. Coping with the tough times, and anybody can be motivated on the final, at the Olympic final, but it's who gets up in the morning, in the dark mornings for training, year after year. And I guess for me, those three things I want to leave with you: a shared vision, a common goal, routines and anchors to help you through the chaos times, vulnerability and kindness to help you cope just that little bit more so you can achieve. And I guess probably leaving you with a picture of us as we arrived in Falmouth, and the power of team can make the impossible possible. So thank you ever so much for listening to me today. And I'm just so in awe of the things that you're achieving with your teams. And while each one of you probably has your own ocean to row and you row those every day, I think there is some commonality between being in a little rowing boat and doing some of the things that you guys do day in, day out. So thank you. So
that's fantastic. Thank you. And I'm just absolutely gobsmacked because to be able to do that day in, day out for as long as you did it is incredible. So thank you for sharing your story. That's really fantastic. And there were so many when you were showing the video, especially, there were so many things about comments like complete and utter resilience in action, just phenomenal. Who wants to go on adventure now? Girl power, literally. Well done for women, incredible. And looks amazing. So we've got a question here from Lisa saying, Guin, you're so inspiring. Thank you for sharing. Sisterhood friendship is a key element of self-reliant groups. How has the relationship with your sister supported you and her in achieving your goals?
Wow, that's a fantastic question, and I'm trying to give it justice. So my sister is 3 years older than me, and we were so different as kids. We always wanted to do different things. And then as we grew up, we actually happened to go to the same college when we were 19. And my sister took up rowing, and she said, Gwyn, you're really, my sister wasn't sporty and I was really sporty. And she said, Gwyn, you're good at sport. Why don't you take up rowing? So I took up rowing, and I was really bad at this. We have this race in rowing, and we have this race in rowing where if you've never won a race, you're allowed to do this race. And most people do this race and win it in their first year. It took me 3 years to win this race. And so what was quite interesting is I was the sporty one, but she was doing better at rowing, and she was the academic one because I was dyslexic and I was doing better academically. So it's funny how we trade off each other. And then, of course, we never rowed in the same boat because we always felt that we never had a coach that would be strong enough for us. And then towards the end of 2000, unfortunately, my mother passed away, but she'd always said, I really wish you rowed in the same boat because then I could be happy with both of you and sad with both of you. And sometimes one of you is always happy and one of them sad. So we remembered that, and an opportunity came, and we had a coach who was strong enough. And so what we did was we put me at one end of the boat, my sister at the other, and in the middle, they put two amazing Scottish women in the middle to keep us apart. And one of them was Catherine Granger, and one of them was Gillian Lindsay. And we went to the Olympics, and we won Great Britain's first silver medal. But why did it work? It worked because we both had ambition and we wanted to achieve, but my sister was a team maker and very good at bringing teams together. And I'm very much a driver and make the team get better. And if you mix that two together, somebody who brings teams together with somebody who is a driver, you get a really good mix. And I think that's why we've worked well together. And we're still best friends. And I spend most of my time around her house with her kids. So I'm in a bubble with her at the moment. So I've been around a lot for sure. Great. Hope that answers that question.
Thank you. And what an incredible experience to share with the family member to win, to win your silver medal is something that not very many people can boast of. So that what an incredible accomplishment. Another question from Isabella is, if you could have been given one piece of extra advice to yourself at the outset, what would it be? So anything that you would have told your younger self?
Yeah, I think so. I think if it's possible to turn it back to that ocean, the crossing, and having crossed the ocean, I think I would have said to myself, don't be as scared. We were so frightened. We were frightened because we weren't frightened of anything particular, but we were frightened of the unknown. And however much preparation you've done, you can't prepare for what it will be like in the hundreds of miles from the edge of land, because of course we've done lots of preparation. I was so scared, and I think I was really scared the second night. So the first time the weather got really big and we were really tired, I think I would just say, have confidence, have belief, just keep going day in, day out, it'll be okay. But yeah.
Thank you. And Noel has asked us, or has said, thank you very much. That was very inspirational. Question: how did you choose the team of women, and why was it all women?
Great question. Well, I think all women. I think I've been asking myself that question. Why is it a lot of the times when I do the stuff I do it with all women? I don't know. I think maybe I like being in teams of women. I'm very, very fascinated with decision making. I like the way women interact with each other in the context of the different roles and the more complexity around leadership. And of course, if you're chasing female records, you have to have all women in the boat. I do think the dynamic would be different if there were guys in there. Maybe a women's group matches my leadership better. You said, how did I choose the women? Well, when you row oceans, you can't choose the women because there are so few women that want to row oceans. So probably there were about 10 or 11 women in all who came forward and said they wanted to do it. And of course, we went with the 5 of us. most often it's the ones that will stay the journey. So a lot of people want to do stuff and they say it, but actually when push comes to shove, they don't turn up on those days, or they don't carry through with the journey. And what is amazing is, you know, if you look at Mary and Jilly, who were in their 30s and 40s, Mary has literally 2 days ago, she said, she came in and she said, I will never row an ocean again. And 2 days ago, she left San Francisco and she's on her way to Hawaii.
Wow.
It's amazing, yeah. And then I had 2 younger ones, Alex and Molly, and they were in their early 20s. In fact, Molly was 19. And actually, it was Molly's mother who was an RNLI coxswain. So she knew the sea. She was the only parent, I think, who really knew what we were doing and the severity of what we were doing. And that's why Molly shared the cabin next to me, so that I would bring her daughter back safely across on the other side. So yeah.
We've got time for just one more question. So Larry's written that your story is so inspiring, and she's off to find the nearest boat,
Yes.
which is interesting. So that'll be great. We'll be looking forward to that. She said, did you have to work hard to get funding and resources to achieve so much? And I know that when you were doing the Olympics, that was quite a challenge. Was it the same challenge for the cross the Atlantic as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what is really, really hard with any of these is that funding. And we were very, very fortunate that Rannoch Adventure sponsored us. So they were the guys that build the boats, and a lot of the cost of that was borne up by the boat manufacturers, because they were very interested in getting those female records. So actually, you know, the support of industry, the support of the people in that community, and the guy who owned that, his support was massively important. And I think if you go back to where I was in the Olympics, before National Lottery money started funding our Olympic team, I would sleep on the changing room floors because I couldn't afford to pay for the hotels to compete. You know, I think there was about 6 months where I decided that there were 3 things you needed to be an athlete. You need your car to transport your boat, you need to eat because that's the fuel that will allow you to train, and you need somewhere to sleep. And I decided that I would get rid of the somewhere to sleep. And so and because rowing's a big community, I basically rang all my friends up and said, are you going on holiday? Where are you going? Do you need someone to house sit? And so for about 6 months, I was, you know, someone would go on honeymoon. I'd hear someone was getting married and I'd go, oh, really? And then I'd go and house sit for them for a week or whatever. And then I came across a housing sponsor, which was so important. And therefore I was able to have a housing that wasn't as expensive, because of course a lot of our rowing is done in the Thames Valley, and it's pretty expensive living down here. So yeah, it is expensive, and getting sponsors, you have to get people that are prepared to back you, I think is the important bit.
Incredible. So thank you so much. I'm sure we could stay on for ages and ages talking to you. I know you've got a birthday party to go to, a virtual birthday, but we really appreciate you coming to speak to us. The comments have been fantastic. Patrick saying, I struggle with 5 minutes on a rowing machine. So 49 days for him rowing is just an incredible achievement. And Wendy, our business advisor, has said, great example of side hustle. So thanks for sharing that. And the challenges that you've that you've undertaken are incredible. Just the comments are coming in so quickly, I can hardly read them. But it's been a real pleasure. And I think when I was kind of reading about you and your journey, one of the quotes that you said was, surround yourself with those people who believe that you can do it. And so it's so, that's exactly what our ethos is about, those people who are there to support you when you're feeling down. And so I thank you so much on behalf of everyone here for sharing your story. And we wish you the best of luck in whatever challenge comes next. I'm sure we'll all be watching and supporting and seeing where in the world you end up next.
Thank you, Pam. It's been brilliant. And thank you, Noel, for encouraging me. I just want to leave with some last words. And again, I'm going to be really, have a really good the rest of this evening. And I know you've got stuff tomorrow as well. Make sure you do the boogie. I'm gutted that I have to go to my friend's birthday party, but have an extra boogie from me. Add another 49 days of boogieing in there. Hey, all right. Take care. Thank you.